with this is Watcher 215. Hey Watcher, you are on Chewed Gum with Arden and Eve. Are you okay if we just call you Watcher, or you want the whole thing?
Oh, watch is fine. Hello, Arden, and hello, Eve. It's great
Hey.
to, well, this is my first time calling Chewed Gum, so this is my first experience with you both on the phone.
Cool.
Well, thanks for calling. What do you want to talk to us about tonight?
I was just responding to the, I guess the poll that came across my feed there. Uh, I don't remember how it was exactly worded. It's escaping me right now, but I was responded in the affirmative, so I was calling. And I said I would call, so I'm kind of following through what I said I would do.
Okay, I
Cool.
appreciate that. So it says in the notes here, you believe we should be following biblical gender roles. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And what would you define biblical gender roles as? I mean, we could, you know, write a book on that, or you can just sum it up for us.
I think, as I understand it, God is the head of the household, and God is the head of Christ. Christ is the head of man. Man is the head of the wife, and the children come below. That that priority, I guess, is how it's laid out.
So the typical hierarchy.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so does that mean, like, do you take this so far? Because I know a lot of people that say that, but then some people take it farther than others. Do you believe that, women should be staying home with the babies and they should do the cooking? A man should not have to do any
Sometimes,
cooking. He should go to work. Like, how far are we taking these gender roles? And does that mean when you
well,
say like a
everything.
hierarchy that way, do you mean that the man makes the final call within the relationship?
I think God is above. Christ is above man, and God is the head of Christ. So that means it comes from God, and then, in other words, the final say is God's say. That would
How
be how
does the
that would work.
wife make sure that the husband is hearing from God and not just like listening to voices in his head or making stuff up or lying?
She's going to have to compare what's being done with the teachings of Christ and see if they are in alignment.
So then what do we do with that verse? I can find it if you want. I think it's in First Peter maybe, that talks about even if a husband isn't adhering to the word of God, it's better for a woman to still submit to him, to the point that she could be being abused, but
Wait,
it's
whoa,
better
whoa,
for
whoa,
her to
whoa,
have.
whoa, whoa, whoa! You gotta read that or find that, because I've never
Sure,
read
I'm
that.
happy to find
Even
that.
if I'm not, if I'm, let me just make sure I heard you correctly. You said
Mhm.
if I'm not submitting to the word of God, she still has to obey what I say.
Yeah, let me pull
That's
it
what
up
you
for you.
said
I will
loosely.
put I'll read you the exact verse. Um,
Is this kind of in
okay,
conjunction
here
with
it is.
the
It's
okay.
it's First Peter 3, 1 through 2. So, wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives when they see the purity and reverence in your lives. So even if your husband isn't a believer, to submit to your husband.
Well, yeah, that I believe submission is definitely needed, um,
Why?
in a
Why
marriage.
should a
In a
woman
marriage,
submit?
not only
Why
not
why
only
why
not
because
listen.
of
I'm not.
why because
Wait, wait,
nope,
wait,
I'm
wait,
asking
wait,
you a
wait.
question. I'm asking a question. I can mute you or you can let
Okay,
me
but I
finish my
didn't.
question.
Let me just get out.
Cool. I'm gonna mute you for a second. So here's the question. Why should it matter whether someone is a man or a woman who submits to who? Why should anybody be doing submitting instead of just equal partnership?
What I was trying to say is both need to submit, and all people need to use submission in all relationships. That's something
What
that's
do you
part of life.
what does submission mean to you?
That means you defer to the other's instruction. That's something that we do in every aspect of our relationships in life.
And you should do so equally to each other? It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or
I say well, I will say yes equally, but when I say that, what I mean is I think both parties should be prayerful in their decision as to what needs to be submitted to. In other words, we're ultimately trying to be submissive to God. That's the primary motive, primary, both the husband and the wife,
Why?
because God is the one that has all the information and has the most wise counsel. He's our counselor.
Wow. How'd you find that out? How do you know that?
Through his word, he revealed himself as such to us.
So the Bible, you read that in the Bible. That's why.
Yes.
Okay, well, what about when Muslims say, "Well, I read in the Quran that I need to do X, Y, or Z." Should I listen to them because they read it in the Quran? Is it the book being
That,
in a book that makes it
that's
true?
no, the fruit of it, I guess, is what decides whether it's true or not. And that would be your
Fruit of
decision if
it.
you want to listen to what the Muslim says or not.
So the fruit of a relationship. So for example, I'm an atheist, my husband is an atheist, and we have what I think objectively is a healthy relationship, a really good relationship. And the fruit of our relationship is great. So, but there's no God involved at all. So does the fruit of my relationship indicate that I'm actually following truth?
It does. I would commend you. I'm aware of your recent marriage. I want to congratulate you and your husband on that.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best. Yeah, you can judge a thing by you can judge the correctness or goodness of a thing by the fruit of it. That's
So I'll
something
tell you,
that Jesus taught us.
there's no gender roles, definitely no biblical gender roles happening in my relationship. So this kind of goes against what you're saying though, because the fruit of my relationship is great. Whereas in the past, I was in relationships where there were clearly defined biblical gender roles happening. And the whole hierarchy, I'm very aware of the umbrella where, you have God and then you have husband and you have wife and you have children. And we were following that, and the fruit of the relationship was shit. So how does
Hmm.
this prove your claim?
Well, I can speak from my own experience. You're free to do obviously what you deem is correct. But what I would just say is that um, in my experience, what I've read in the Bible has been very helpful in my marriage and in our relation, not only my marriage relationship, but other relationships as well.
Right. But when I was following that, it was harmful to me in my relationship. So how do we determine if you just happen to be cherry picking some things that are decent that you could find outside of the Bible? There's amazing relationship studies and research and books and guides and therapists and all that out there where we can get stuff from the Bible where like that the Bible has, but without all of the insane stuff, like where women are purchased and they're sold and they're raped and they're children and they're required to be one of many wives without any consent to a non-monogamous relationship. There's so many things we can look at in the Bible that are really not helpful for women at all. So why would I go to the Bible for that
For
when I can
example,
go to
perhaps
other sources that follow studies that have evidence that they work without having to pick out all these bones?
you're free to do that. Obviously, everyone is free to do that.
I'm saying, why isn't that better than doing what you've done?
It's not better.
Why not?
I think we both are doing the same thing. We are believing
But
something, acting upon it, and go
I'm
ahead.
not having to overlook verses that directly led to me staying in abusive relationships. I don't have to do that now that I'm just following um, actual studies and relationship therapists that know what they're talking about that would never excuse any sort of abuse. So I'm saying, why is it better to follow a book where you have to ignore the majority of it in order to experience a healthy relationship than it is to follow stuff where it's just all good and helpful advice?
that just hasn't been my experience, Eve. I'm sorry to say. I'm not sorry to
Right.
say it, but I'm sorry that
Right,
your
but
experience was different, but that wasn't my
I'm
experience.
asking. I know, and you're lucky, and that's amazing, and I love that for you. I'm asking in general for everyone
Thank
else.
you.
Why should somebody listen to you who says follow the Bible for relationships versus me who says follow experts?
Well, experts are fine, but there may be a higher authority than the experts that you are using, and I put Jesus higher than those experts.
But if your claimed higher uh being, power, whatever, leads people into relationships that are harmful and following experts does not, then why are we
Can
following
you
one over the other?
can you name a teaching of Jesus that caused you to be in harm's way or to
Turning the
be
other
a
cheek.
victim of the
Turning the
turning?
other
Oh,
cheek. Mhm.
okay. Hmm, that's interesting. So you don't believe in turning the other cheek.
Not if
You
you
think that
wanna
that
actually take care of yourself and not be in an abusive relationship where you're constantly turning the other cheek and, facing abuse over and over and over again, and forgiving 70 times 7 because that's what you're
mm,
taught to do, and this person doesn't forgive you, and this person doesn't turn the other cheek, and you find yourself in a cycle of abuse.
Yeah, if I can hop in here, Watcher. So I think the frustrating
come
thing
on.
about this conversation is like when it comes to turning the other cheek, like there's a kernel of truth in a lot of the biblical teachings. I don't think Eve or I would deny that, right? Like, sure,
Sure, yeah.
Thank you,
sometimes
Arden.
sometimes taking it on the chin and
Can I
just
just
kind of
pause? Can I just
wait, can
pause?
I just finish my
Can I
point? Because
just
I
pause?
just started talking.
I just
So
wanted to thank you for that. I'm sorry, but go ahead. I'm sorry for
okay.
interrupting you.
Thank you. So, sure, there's a kernel of truth in all of this stuff, but the problem is you're calling in to say that people should follow biblical gender roles. And when we're trying to ask you why and pointing to examples of why maybe people shouldn't, you're just deferring to, well, it's just my experience that it's good, right? So it doesn't sound like you actually believe people should follow gender roles. It sounds like you just believe that you should follow biblical gender roles.
I don't think it's exclusive to me. I think that other people can also reap benefit from, for example, being um, submissive to each other in their marriage relationship. That's been my experience that has worked out quite well for my marriage. And I think that, and it's not only in marriage. I think submission is a thing that we have in all relationships in life that's very beneficial. And it's kind of like a humility that we walk in towards one another, which is something that the Bible is really big on.
See, but this is so frustrating because we just talked about, like, you just made a really general statement, like submission is good in all relationships, but then we just went through a whole bunch of examples a few minutes ago about why that's actually not the case, and that submission in a lot of relationships can be terrible because sometimes people are abusive and cruel, and submission to those people leads to harm. So
I
clearly it's
understand
not the
that.
case
I
that
understand that.
submission isn't good in all cases, right?
Okay, I can give you that. That's I absolutely agree with you because I've seen that as well.
Right.
People abuse other people that are being submissive to them.
But
Look at Christ.
hold on, if I can, I would just want to make a whole point here because I have a few I was kind of walking down some steps, right? But you admit that
Okay,
the
I'm
Bible
listening.
does say that the wife should be subservient to the husband as the husband is subservient to Christ and yada yada yada. Like that is a prescription
Hmm.
that all people should
Hmm.
follow that Jesus Christ is making. But you just agreed that that prescription is bad and that it doesn't work for people. So you are literally disagreeing with the Bible that you came here to advocate for. Does that not give you pause?
No, I disagree with the abuser. That's what I disagree with. I don't disagree with the commandment.
But you literally just said you said I'll give you that. When I said that submitting is not good in all cases, you said I'll give you that.
What I was giving you was the reality that people abuse others in relationships, and they use
Yes, and
sometimes the
submission to those
Bible as
people is
justification.
wrong. Correct?
Yes, if they're abusing you, obviously,
Right.
of course. That's the fruit of
So,
some. That's what
Watcher,
the fruit that you would reject. You would reject that.
Watcher, if I was your daughter and I came to you and I said, "Hey, I'm in an abusive relationship." I went to my pastor, and my pastor showed me these Bible verses about how I should continue submitting, and that will eventually win my husband over, and I should forgive 70 times 7. I should turn the other cheek, et cetera, et cetera. And then I say, also, I went to my therapist, and my therapist says, this is inappropriate behavior. I need to set boundaries. This is not okay. I need to be clear that this behavior cannot continue if I'm going to stay in relationship with this person. I need to find a plan to find a safe place for now. Who would you tell me to listen to, the pastor or the therapist?
I agree with the therapist because I don't believe that scripture justifies abuse at all.
Right. So then you're agreeing with us that it is more beneficial to look to experts, consistently look at experts than the Bible. The Bible you can only look at and cherry pick every now and then, and sometimes it helps. Experts can be helpful all the time because they're actually giving found advice that's sound, not from a
I'm
book
present.
from 2,000 years ago that was prioritizing the safety and well-being of men over women.
I'll present something to you. You can take it or leave it. But something that I learned, learned is that part of how God is actually judging all of us is this thing that we call cherry picking, the thing that we say affirm as being true, or what we say is false, is part of how He judges our hearts.
God judges
Do you
our
have
hearts by how we interpret a book because it's so vague that you can't get clear answers out of it. God evaluates you based on how efficiently he thinks that you interpreted those words.
Yeah, it's a revelation of our hearts how we interpret the Bible.
And I thought you'd
So
say
why
no to
would I
that.
go through yeah, why would I go through that
Our,
trouble if I could just go to experts?
you can't. That's what you've done, and that's what we all have the freedom to do.
Right, and it's worked
You can reject.
significantly
You can
better than
reject.
your claim that biblical gender
Mhm,
roles are good, 'cause we're
mhm.
presenting over and over and over again why they're not, and you're agreeing with us, and then you're going on to say, "But blah, blah, blah," which is really frustrating.
Well, I mean, I can only say what is my experience. I can acknowledge that you have rejected that, and that you have a good experience as well. That's fine. We all have our own experience. We can only bear witness to what we have experienced. And that's all I'm bringing to the table.
So if that's where you want to end it, that's cool, Watcher. I just want to say that again, this conversation is kind of frustrating because like it feels like you are
I'm
answering
sorry.
a lot of questions honestly. No, it's just it feels like you are answering a lot of questions honestly because you're acknowledging that experts are more reliable and that probably a lot of people should be going to experts over the Bible. That a lot of Christians wouldn't even concede that. But then you're also advocating that biblical gender roles are good. So it's really
Right,
hard to know. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Eve.
it feels like you're smart enough to not agree with abuse, which I appreciate that you answered honestly, because I can't
Right.
tell you how many callers would say, "Well, I would have told my daughter to listen to the pastor and stay in an abusive relationship." So I really appreciate you. I do feel like you're engaging honestly for part of this conversation in that you're being smart. I think that you are more moral than the Bible. I think you're more moral than
Absolutely.
the supposed gender roles that it's calling for, which I deeply appreciate. But then I feel like you're letting your dogma win, and then you're still defending it, even though you admit that it's not ideal at all, which you would think, God's inerrant word would be ideal. And it's as we pointed out, and as you've agreed, it's not. So I would just ask that I appreciate the conversation. We're not saying we're frustrated with like you and how you're handling the call a
Yeah,
little
no.
bit, but not
Mhm.
not like that. Just that it's frustrating to hear somebody so close to getting it, but then
Right.
still defending something that they don't even agree with at the end of the day.
It feels to me like if you've ever watched a sci-fi movie where there's like a force field and somebody touches it and it like launches them 50 feet back. Like we're getting you so close to the point, and then your indoctrination like hits you like a force field and just sends you flying backwards and like totally undoing half the conversation we did. And honestly, that's a good
Mm.
sign to me because you're acknowledging some stuff and there is like there's a line in the sand somewhere in your mind. And I definitely really encourage you to explore, rewatch this call and watch where it happens, where like you agree to certain stuff to us, but then I'll
Hmm.
ask you like, well, doesn't that mean, and Eve would ask you, well, doesn't that mean this leads to this conclusion? And then you won't accept the conclusion though. And that's really interesting. So I would highly encourage you to rewatch the call and explore this again, because this is a really interesting conversation with you.
Yeah, I think
I'm
so.
definitely going to do that. Definitely going to do that,
Thank
Arden.
you.
Before I go, Arden, the last time I talked to Matt was, I mean, that's probably like it might even be like almost 3 years ago, and he hung up on me. But I'm willing to I want to talk to him again, but I don't know when's the earliest he'll be on the air where I could reach out to try to talk to him again. You know when that is?
He has a show tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central Time.
Okay, I'll try to do that. Hey, it was great talking to you guys. My experience with
Thanks,
Q Gum was
Watcher.
pretty good.
Cool.
I'll
Thanks,
probably
Nice. You're
call
Watcher.
you
welcome
back
to call
again.
back anytime. Sounds good.
All right, peace. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. I appreciate calls like that because as frustrating as like that angle that we brought up multiple times, David was being civil and polite in the conversation, and not David. Why did I say David? Oh, that's
I was
the
like,
next.
oh, do you know this
There's
guy?
one. No, Watcher. I don't know. I just saw that name pop up. Watcher was being. That's not Watcher's name, by the way. We saw that too. It was listed, but I didn't just dox them. Anyways, Watcher was being civil, and I feel like engaging 90% honestly, but then would like we said, turn back. So anyways, those are the
Yeah.
conversations I do want to have more of though, because if we can strongly disagree and then go back and forth and still get some honest answers in there, I feel like we actually have a chance of getting somewhere and having some sort of understanding where the disconnect is. And from that conversation, I feel like the disconnect is just exactly what I said, just trying to be loyal to something for the sake of being loyal to it, even when you are more logical than that in your own answers and your own understanding of the situation. So,
Yep.
Which is what happens.
Hey, come on, man. We gotta promote that clip we all just watched.
Well, I'd rather not shill.
Okay, well, Daddy has a $2,000 a month red oak habit, and I am your production god, and you will shill when I tell you to shill. Dance for me, baby.
Go, God damn it. Why did my life come to this? Go to patreon.com/call-the-line and donate. God damn it.
This is what happens when we let live chatters write our scripts.